The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports. You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast.
105-102 is the final. Clippers winning it, taking home court advantage and bringing it back to Intuit. And there's a lot of things we can say. One of them I'll say is that we didn't even play that great. I thought there were some adjustments made I'll talk about as well. But I always say that it starts and ends with your best player. And when your best player doesn't play well, there is nowhere else to look when you want to start looking at the blame pie than at the top. Kawhi Leonard had 7 turnovers in game 1. He had only 22 points in game 1, and he was 9 for 15 from the field, which is way too efficient to only be shooting 15 shot attempts. From the jump in this game, he was super aggressive. And I talked about in the preview and in the crossover preview with the Locked On Nuggets guys. Oh, by the way, Clipper Nation, if you're on YouTube, I want you to all go over to Locked On Nuggets because this is what Nick did to me last year. So we're going to do it to them. I want you to all go over to Locked On Nuggets and give them a big Clipper Nation in the comment section of their last video. Clipper Nation. And honestly, just do it the entire series. There's Clipper Nation on every single video on YouTube for them. Locked On Nuggets. Show them some love as well. But I talked about with them, are the Nuggets going to be very switch happy with Jamal Murray against Kawhi Leonard, and will they adjust if he's cooking them? Well, not in time, because I counted. Kawhi Leonard created 15 points in the first quarter alone with Jamal Murray guarding him. He scored 12, and he got an assist on a double team with Murray switched on to him to Chris Dunn for 3. And in the third quarter, Kawhi had 4 more points on Jamal Murray. So out of, he had 5 free throws. So if you subtract 5 from 39, out of 34 points that he scored, 16 of them were with Jamal Murray guarding him. And there was one later in the game, like in the fourth quarter, where before Harden threw the ball to Kawhi, had a little, this is good stuff from Kawhi and Norman Powell. I don't know if it's a set play or they just did it, but they kind of exchanged positions on the wing, which sometimes will force the defense to switch. But Jamal Murray did not have to switch. This was one of the easiest, switches where when you're watching it, you're like, no one's even setting a screen. You don't have to switch there. But by all means, if they're going to do that, we're getting exactly what we want. And I thought Kawhi Leonard did such a great job of being quicker in his attack, more deliberate with his attack, attacking gaps, getting 2 feet in the paint. And it was a lot of it where he's starting his move from. He's catching the ball closer to the basket, inside the arc, being more decisive before the help comes. And I thought besides maybe 1 or 2 plays with Ben Simmons in the game, throughout the game, when they started doubling Kawhi or loading up, the 4 guys on the floor were much smarter about where to relocate. And you got to think the coaching staff said something to them about that. Look, when Kawhi is getting doubled, how are we getting turnovers? Well, maybe you guys aren't giving him, avenues to pass. And Norman Powell, that was one huge shot he made late. And again, this is what makes me actually very optimistic for these games at Intuit Dome, is that Norman Powell had another game where he shot very poorly. 5 for 12 in game 1, 5 for 14 in game 2. So far in the series, shooting 10 for 26. But you know what I have to say about him? He made the big shots late. That floater when Kawhi was doubled, he got the ball. He did a good job from the weak side, flashing to the middle. And there was another time where Zubats caught the ball in the middle when Kawhi was doubled, and he put up that push shot. So it's really, that's an adjustment, made by the players. See, the coaching staff probably told them something, but it's all about the players doing it and executing it. I'm a guy that coaches at middle school level, youth level, AAU, but it's about the players. You can preach something. We all have common sense. The coaching aspect is not, and look, I'm going to talk more about Ty Lue's adjustments, but that was just one of the coaching staff's adjustments is we were much better about the way we handled the Kawhi doubles. But a lot of it just comes down to Kawhi making the right read, being more patient, looking up. And it starts with his aggression. And this was just one of those games where it's just Kawhi Leonard, as the new term is called, magnet ball, where every single shot's just going in. He has these kind of games. He has these kinds of stretches. What makes it special is when he gets to do it in the playoffs. What hasn't been special is how little he's gotten to do it in a Clipper uniform in the playoffs. So again, being at the Intuit Dome Plaza, watching this live with the people, I mean, it's just really one of the more surreal experiences of my Clipper fandom. And I would encourage everybody to come to one of them at least. It's such a vibe. It's really a dream come true. And, Thursday is going to be a movie, but Kawhi's really healthy. And we just saw one of the better games in Clipper playoff history by an individual. Like, that's the bottom line. And this is what I like about the playoffs. And this is why I'm kind of a inside the NBA advocate, is that, yes, in the regular season, sometimes they can be lazy with their analysis and not be watching games in the regular season. But when it comes to the playoffs, people sometimes ding those guys for being simplistic. And, some would say, you analyze the game better than people on TV, all this. I still don't think that I know more about basketball than said panel. Because I'm never going to be able to say that I played in the league like Charles Barkley and those guys. Just never. They have a different level of expertise that I'll never reach. When it comes to breaking down what a defense is doing in the modern NBA schematically, yes, I think I'm good at articulating it to some degree. But what I wanted to make the point about with them is, in the playoffs, their analysis gets better, in my opinion, because despite the fact that teams make adjustments and there is some complex X's and O's stuff happening, a lot of time it's very simplistic. Your best players got to perform, and if they don't, you're going to lose. And Kawhi Leonard did more than just perform. He did it on both ends. His help defense, and there were times late in this game where I got nervous, right? We haven't seen the late in games, the Denver Nuggets are lights out with their crunch time offense in terms of, when we look back at the last couple of years, that Murray, Jokic pick and pop, so hard to guard late. Jamal Murray's had several game winners in the playoffs against the Lakers. We know how that goes. And on our side, I mean, Harden, I was talking about last game, Harden looks like a better closer than Kawhi. Well, this was one of those games where he says, shut up, Darian, shut up, Dime. I can still close. And we haven't had many of these games as a Clipper, I can't lie. And it's not about the game-winning shot. It's about making those big shots late against pressure, against good defenders, and he absolutely did that. And what I talked about with Kawhi is, mid-range shots stopping on a dime versus coming to a full stop. When he's stopping on a dime the way he did going to his right for that pull-up against Aaron Gordon, and by the way, I talked about this when we beat Cleveland a couple weeks ago. When Kawhi Leonard is going up against the likes of Evan Mobley, when we beat New York against the likes of OG, now in this game, Aaron Gordon, and he's getting buckets on them like they're just another guy, that's when Kawhi is looking like Pete Kawhi, which is one of the 10 greatest small forwards to ever play this sport. And he plays for the Clippers and chose to do it. And me saying those words had absolutely no meaning, no results behind them, and we still haven't accomplished anything in this series. But the fact that I'm even getting to witness this is like, because I almost Mr. Team, the Kawhi era is over, blow it up. He was never going to be healthy in the playoffs, almost as a coping mechanism. And I will gladly admit I'm wrong if we can get more memories like this by winning this series, because, I love the way Kawhi Leonard plays basketball. People have been very hip to my criticisms of him, and some have obviously disagreed massively, which is totally fair. But a lot of it's just because I've been a disappointed fan, and a lot of us have been. And it felt hopeless at times with him. And the most frustrating thing about it all is that we know how good he is when healthy. He's not a Chris Paul or a Blake Griffin where it's like, if all the stars align and everything goes well, they can lead a team to a championship. This is a guy who did it and then chose to come here. No one in NBA history has won a Finals MVP and then left, except for him. And he chose here, and we haven't reaped any of the benefits, except for, the part he played in 2021. It was special seeing him in this game, making that big shot late against Aaron Gordon, hitting that turnaround it was also against Aaron Gordon, the interception late in the game. And we did such a great job of doubling Jokic, and then the loading up on the other guys. We exposed the Nuggets spacing. When they had two guys right next to each other, Kawhi did a great job of playing both at once and making Jokic make forcing Jokic to make a tough pass and forcing him to turn the ball over several times. I thought our help defense and our hands in the passing lanes, our anticipation off of those Jokic double teams was sublime. And I'm going to be talking about more of those adjustments coming up. But Kawhi Leonard, 39 points, 3 rebounds, which is kind of low for him in a game like this, but it is what it is because we got out-rebounded 50-32. Oh, my God. That's something we definitely got to improve next game. There's no doubt. 15 offensive rebounds for Denver. So, the thing is, we didn't even play that great. We can play better than this. It's almost like we honestly should have. I think we played better in game 1 as a team. It's just Kawhi was insane. Nobody scored more than 18 points besides Kawhi. He had 39, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, and 1 turnover. How about that assist-to-turnover ratio? 5-1 compared to the other day? 15 for 19 from the field is the most ridiculous part of it all, and 4 for 7 from 3. He literally went 11 for 12 from 2. I mean, he's a machine when he gets going, and it's just a privilege to watch it on our team.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen.
17 years. It took 17 years, but the Detroit Pistons, led by Cade Cunningham, have broke the drought.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast.
The Pistons just evened up the series against the New York Knicks. They get their first playoff win. First playoff win since 2008. Since 2008, Cade Cunningham just led the Detroit Pistons to their first playoff win since 2008. This, you guys can probably hear it a little bit. My voice, I'm losing my voice. Hosting that live watch room, man, I was losing my mind. The Pistons won this game 100-94. We're going to talk about later about how the young guys stepped up and absolutely answered the call. We'll also talk about how home court is now in the Pistons' advantage. But look, man, the Pistons' defensive coverage and defensive game plan in this game was truly elite. They were fantastic defensively. This was one of the best defensive performances you probably will see in the playoffs. The New York Knicks, a team that has Karl Anthony Towns, that has Mikal Bridges, that has OG Anunoby, that has Jalen Brunson, scored 94 points in this game. The Pistons forced them into 14 turnovers. They shot 28% from deep. They shot 42% from the field. After burning them in the first game, Cat was 5 of 11 in this game. After burning them in this first game, OG Anunoby went 4 of 10 in this game. Cade was fantastic defensively on OG Anunoby. I don't want to spoil the second segment so much, but man, Jalen Duren, we'll dive even more into it later on, but Jalen Duren was walking into this game with a ton of pressure. Isaiah Stewart was ruled out. He did not play in this game, so they did not have their defensive center. They did not have their defensive anchor for this game, which meant a lot of pressure, a lot of the responsibility was going to fall on Jalen Duren. And Jalen Duren, I almost swore. Jalen Duren absolutely answered the call. 12 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks, and a steal. They stayed with the matchup of Tobias on Cat and Jalen Duren on Josh Hart. He didn't pick up not one defensive 3-second violation in this game. He did a much better job of trapping along the baseline, especially when Cat went to the post-ups. They were sending the trap along the baseline, as soon as he put one dribble down and forcing Cat to try and make a read off a live dribble where he's not very good at. They completely shut down Cat in this game. And Jalen Duren as a roamer was so damn good in this game. He was infinitely better. And it turns out young guys will probably be better than their first ever playoff game. Turns out, shocking theory. Who would have thought it? But turns out that guys will be better in their second, third, fourth, fifth playoff game than they were in their very first playoff game in Madison Square Garden. The defense was absolutely fantastic from the Pistons. Tobias Harris was the primary matchup on Karl Anthony Towns. He had 13 rebounds. He played 43 minutes. Tobias Harris is 32 years old. He played 43 minutes and was banging all night with Cat in the post and was physical as hell all game and ended the game with 13 rebounds. Remember in the first game, after the last podcast, I spoke about how the Knicks really did a great job of crashing the glass and keeping the Pistons off the glass. The Pistons weren't able to dominate inside like they wanted to in the first game. Cade had 12 rebounds. Duren had 13. Tobias had 13. That's 38 rebounds just through 3 guys. The Pistons were active as hell on the glass. They were physical as hell in this game. Physical as hell in this game. From the opening tip-off, they were physical with the New York Knicks. And the refs, so far through 2 games, for the most part, now we'll talk about it a little later, but for the most part, they've allowed physicality. There's been some tough calls. There was one just horrible, absolutely horrible call on Asar Thompson at the end of this game. Absolutely horrible one. But for the most part, they have allowed these teams to play physical for the most part. And that's lending itself to Detroit. If they can play defense like this, they can beat the New York Knicks. And if you watch this game, the Pistons really, I don't even feel, they didn't just outplay the Knicks by a 6-point advantage. They really should have won this game by 15 plus points. They were outplaying the living hell out of the Knicks for the first 3 quarters of this game. Heck, even in the fourth quarter when the Knicks made their run, the Pistons answered and kept the lead. The Pistons outplayed the hell out of the Knicks in this game. The Pistons had 15 turnovers in this game. It's the only reason the Knicks stayed in this game. There was multiple times when the Pistons forced a turnover or got a stop. And when they went out to go in transition, Paul Reed would get a dumb turnover. He had 2 turnovers. Cade would throw something away. Asar threw one away. Tobias threw one away. There was multiple times where they really could have stepped on the Knicks' necks, and they just turned it over. There was multiple blown shots at the rim that they had in this game. Paul Reed missed a few bunnies. Tobias missed the dunk. Malik missed the dunk. They had a few bunnies at the rim where they really could have just extended the lead out. And despite all of that, along with Malik Beasley being 1 of 8 from deep, along with THJ being 0 of 6 from deep, 0 of 8 in the game, the Pistons still won by 6 points. The Pistons put up an absolute defensive masterclass, and that's how they can beat these Knicks teams. This is how they can win this series. They win on defense, and they get out in transition, and they score. They have found something with this Tobias on Cat and Duren on Hart. If Tibbs wants to play Josh Hart 40 minutes a game, the Pistons will gladly accept it. They'll play off of him. They'll roam off of him. He can shoot 2 of 6. He can make 1 out of 2 threes. He can do all of that. The Pistons will take that because it allows them to clamp down on Cat. It allows them to clamp down on drives and make it incredibly tough on Cat to get anything at the rim. The first game, they didn't execute it well enough. This game, they executed it to perfection. And lastly, before we move on, I know he fouled out, but I thought Asar, I thought Cade, I thought Dennis Schroeder, I thought these guys did an absolutely fantastic job of not falling for any of Jalen Brunson's deceleration foul calls. Now, he ended the game with 11 free throws, and a lot of those I think were questionable, especially that last foul call on Asar. I thought it was incredibly questionable. Actually, not questionable. It was just terrible. It was not a foul. But for the majority of this game, Jalen Brunson loves going through a pick and roll. Once he has someone on his back, if he gets by you on a step, anything on a drive, on a pick and roll, he loves to stop as soon as he starts his drive, stop and pick up a foul from someone running into their back and throw his head back. He does it all game. He's the worst flopper in the NBA. Watching this dude has been terrible. He flops on every single play, dude. But his favorite move is the decel, fly back, and draw a foul because guys are running around the screen to catch up to him. And I thought Asar was fantastic on not falling for any of it. Schroeder was fantastic for not falling on any of it. And this is now 2 straight games where Brunson's had to take 25, 27 plus shots to get to 30. He had 37 points on 27 shots in this game. He had 6 turnovers. The Pistons, he's getting his points, but the Pistons are making him work hard as hell to get to those points. And if it takes him 27 shots to get to 35, the Pistons won. The Pistons won. They will take that. This is now 2 straight games he's had to take these many shots to get to his point total. They will take that. Their defense has been great for the most part. And really, I feel like they've outplayed the Knicks for 8.5 out of the, what? How many quarters? They've outplayed the Knicks for like 6.5, 7 of these quarters out of the 8 quarters they've played. They really could be up 2-0. Now you're heading back to Detroit, 1-1. They break the playoff drought. 17-year drought. It is over. Pistons win. Kay Cunningham leads them. What a game, man. What an absolute defensive masterclass. And JB just coached a hell of a game. A hell of a game.
Was it just a night of bad shooting or a Tom Thibodeau special?
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
Who should I be mad at coming out of a really frustrating Game 2 loss to the Pistons?
Take your pick. I don't know if there's like one person that you could definitively blame for this game. Although if I was going to, let's say that I had a dartboard and it had all the people on it you could potentially be mad at, and I threw a dart at it, but they were all weighted by being bigger. For the more mad you should probably be at them, I would imagine the Tibbs would be pretty large on that bubble chart. Just not a great game by him. I thought pretty much every aspect that he needed to do well in this game, he did poorly in. Just in general, I don't think the game plan, I just don't think there was one. It seemed like first half he attempted to play a couple bench players, played Campaign 4 minutes, played Landry Shamet 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Deuce did not really have it going in this game, but wasn't like horrendous. And only played 13 minutes and 20 seconds. Mitch played 20 minutes. We barely saw the 2 big arrangement, which I think we were both in agreement, like kind of was one of the swinging factors of the first game. Part of what made that 21-0 run like cook was having Cat and Mitch out there with shooting. And yet barely went to that except for when Josh Hart was in foul trouble. So Josh Hart plays. I was shocked. I literally was shocked. I looked and I was like, I could swear he played the entire second half. Apparently he sat for 3 minutes at some point. I forgot when that was, but blink and you miss it, I guess, because every minute that he was out there was, I don't want to harp on it too much and like pretend that I'm just like blaming him entirely for this or something, but every minute that he was on the floor was pain in this game. There was just, it was the worst possible version of Josh Hart. And yet we got the third most minutes on the team out of him in this game, only behind OG and Brunson. To say nothing of the fact that like OG drew the hardest assignment on Cade Cunningham in this game, and yet Cade ends up playing. I guess they roughly matched each other's minutes, but like there maybe would have been a little benefit to giving Shamet like another 3 minutes in the second half. Give OG just like that little extra bit of time off the floor because he looked pretty gassed down the stretch of the game. Jalen Brunson subs himself out again, and it was a little less cute this time. I don't know if he had to take a dump or if he had to switch his shoes, but he definitely switched his shoes. So if he subbed himself out just to switch shoes again, like, bro, just find a pair of shoes that works for you and just stick with it. Like, if those are the ones that are good, like, don't sub yourself out of a game down the stretch of it to go change your freaking shoes. But it's either way, he played a little better after that, but it was just completely unimaginative offense down the stretch. It's kind of like, I think you mentioned this to me before the show, and it totally resonated with me. Like, it's like he's still coaching this team like it's last year's team, and like you have to rely on Jalen Brunson to do all this, completely ignoring the fact that like last year's team only had to operate that way because Julius Randle was hurt, and because Mitchell Robinson was hurt, and because OG Anunoby was mostly hurt in that Pacers series and everything else. And like you had other talent on that team, but they were just all hurt. So you had to rely on like Brunson and Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo to like play 46 minutes a game or whatever, because that was just like the only thing that you had at your disposal. This team is at full strength right now. They traded for all this talent in the offseason. Mikal Bridges, like, he got some touches down the stretch and actually got up 18 shots in this game. So like, but it just, something felt off with him, like with how he was being utilized down the stretch. Cat takes his last shot with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. And all in favor of like running Josh Hart pick and rolls with Jalen Brunson down the stretch of this game. Like it didn't make any sense to me. The whole game plan just sucked. It was terrible. And it almost felt, it's not often that like if my team is in a position to like quote steal a game that I'm ever like, oh, this actually sort of feels a little dirty in this position right now. And yet when the Knicks tied it up at 92 late in this game, I was like, they don't deserve this. Like it's crazy that Detroit has managed to shoot poorly enough to let them come back and get to 92-92, because the Knicks had no business winning this game, and go figure they didn't. So yeah, it was pretty bad game, pretty bad time. I'll let you pick which of those million things I just mentioned to zero in on first.
Yeah, good blame pie by you. You gave me all the candidates. Yeah, I look to both Tom Thibodeau and Jalen Brunson. I agree with your assessment of my assessment pre-show that it just feels like this is it's the exact same game plan in the playoffs. Like roll out the ball and it's Jalen go save us. And you gave up whatever it was 6-7 first round picks to bring in Mikal Bridges, to bring in Karl Anthony Towns, and to presumably like revolutionize this offense. And because Tom Thibodeau is, for whatever reason, there's just an incredible rigidity there, and he is like pot committed to a starting lineup that playing far more minutes than any other lineup in the league was decidedly average on the season. And after the All-Star break was worse than that. They had a negative net rating after the All-Star break. And it's not just that the starters played so many minutes. Like the sin to me is that they played almost all those minutes together. Like you have minutes in the first half with both Towns and Brunson on the bench. That doesn't really make any sense to me. You have bench units without Mikal Bridges. Like if you are not going to like spoon feed him the ball when Tim Hardaway's hiding on him, and like Mikal, if he's the guy you traded 5 first round picks for, even like throw that out the window. Like just Mikal purely like by the merit of his own talent should be able to cook Tim Hardaway one-on-one. And you should play through him if that's the matchup, versus like having Jalen Brunson hunt every single time down, because that it is difficult. It wears on you. And I think it has like a discernible effect on his teammates down the stretch of games. Like there were 2 different possessions this one where Jalen Brunson decided to pull up over a double team while looking off on one. Karl Anthony Towns wide open for 3 on the wing, decided to shoot over 2 guys. Another one, OG Anunoby, wide open the corner. Brunson decides to shoot over 2 guys. He makes it the second time. I have a list. I don't know if we'll have time to get to all of them. I have a list about 8 of those shots that Brunson took in this game. And it is very difficult for me to tell how much of that is Jalen Brunson, like at least in the context of the playoffs, like having a little bit of a hero complex, or maybe just like, maybe this is just who he is as a basketball player, saying like, I don't see those guys. I'm the best player on the court. I need to play with that confidence. I need to be the central figure to be the best version of myself. And if I'm the best version of myself, that's giving my team the best chance to win. And that's Brunson's logic there. Or if that's like Tom Thibodeau, like limiting optionality, because when Josh Hart is on the floor, we saw Detroit actually successfully execute the strategy that every other good team in the league has used to neuter the starting lineup, which is throw a wing on Josh Hart, then double him when he drives with your center. And Cat is not a good enough passer, and Hart is not enough good enough shooter to make you pay. And over again, Detroit extracted the maximum amount of pain for the fact that the Knicks do not have good spacing. They are a poor passing team after one at the start of the season. Alex, we kept talking about it. Looked like they were a great passing team. They're all of a sudden a really poor passing team. And Tom Thibodeau, whether it was just inserting Deuce McBride, even on an off night, his passive impact is just so much better than Hart, because he has to be guarded, or some kind of schematic adjustment to try to get Karl Anthony Towns involved. Like there was no pivot, and like the only thing that really changed was Brunson got really hot, and Brunson is an incredible offensive talent. So it worked well enough down the stretch. The Knicks played hard. Detroit played hard. Detroit played better. Detroit won the game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we could get more into it in the next segment, talking through ways that maybe they can remedy that. I mean, I think the pretty obvious answer is just more ball movement, more people movement, being more creative, maybe going back to some of the things that they ran early in the season and or ran when Brunson was out, which Brunson definitely, for better or worse, is Tibbs's greatest security blanket at all times. And I think he would prefer to just have the ball in his hands pretty much all the time.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
All right, so I know you guys are going to hate me for bringing this up again. I keep talking and banging the drum for Shedeur Sanders, and I do think the Browns still do like Shedeur Sanders. I do believe that they would like to take him, just not at number 2 overall. And so understanding that, I think they would at least consider a trade up for him if he falls to a certain point, is the way I'm kind of approaching this draft. Now, I am backing off the stance that they're going to be aggressive and go do it because of, well, several factors. One being the cost to get back up. If you're trying to get to like even 20, you're going to have to overpay massively. I'm talking like probably at least one of your thirds this year, a couple other picks this year, probably a first or a second next year. Like it's going to be a haul to get from even 33 to like 20 if you have to jump the Steelers per se to get Shedeur Sanders if you're worried about the Steelers being the team that takes him. So I don't think it's going to happen because I just think the price is going to be too rich for Andrew Berry. But there is an NFL insider who is not ruling it out. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN said in a segment on SportsCenter late last week that Cleveland does, quote, love Shedeur Sanders. They have love for Shedeur Sanders. And he actually mentions, as I just said, the Steelers as an option to potentially draft Shedeur Sanders if he falls. The exact quote is, if he falls out of the top 3, well, not falls, but if he doesn't go in the top 3 right now, I don't see a natural home. Seems like the Saints could go quarterback, but they might not do it at 9. They could go cornerback or offensive line, defensive line. So where does that leave it? If I had to predict, I would say somebody trades up to get him if he kind of slides into the teens or maybe the later first round. So I've ruled out the teens. If you're trading up to the teens to get Shedeur Sanders, you should have just taken him 2. Like you must have thought he was at least good enough to be worth it at that pick. Now what you have to pay, you have to overpay in terms of draft capital to get back up to get him in the teens, not worth it to me. So I don't think it's going to happen if he slides to the teens. For the Browns to trade up, I do think it would take him getting past the Steelers and probably into like the mid-20s. Like if you're talking like pick 24, 25, somewhere in that range, that's where I could see it. That's sort of striking distance where you still have to give up a decent amount to get up there. Maybe like even a future second and some other picks. But it's at least in range where it makes sense for them to be like, okay, we like this guy. Let's go get him and be a little bit aggressive here without, mortgaging the entire future, because we all know the situation this team is in. They didn't have first round picks the last 3 years because of the Deshaun Watson trade. They're trying to replenish and make amends and make up for the picks that they were lacking the last several years by, filling out this roster and utilize as many of these picks as possible to address needs in certain areas that they have to fill. So you don't want to give up a ton, especially this year where you have 4 top 100 picks to get, just go get this quarterback who, like I said, does have, I think, a ceiling to his game. But, I've said it a million times. He is a fit for Kevin Stefanski's offense. I think he's probably one of the best fits for Kevin Stefanski's offense. He is the best fit for Kevin Stefanski's offense in this draft. I will say that without any reservations. And I understand where some of the concerns come from, the not so strong arm, the lack of some athleticism, but he has the confidence you need. Again, he has the accuracy, he has the decision making, he can do all the things that you would need to do in a Kevin Stefanski system. And for that reason, I still like him for the Browns. Given Andrew Berry's comments, I've backed off the idea that they're going to be aggressive and trade back up. I think they're probably going to actually end up settling for somebody like Dart, Milroe, maybe Tyler Shuck even later, and let that be what it is. See what that guy can bring to the table, and if they're right back drafting a quarterback next year, so be it. But again, in a scenario where he fell, I think Jeremy Fowler's right. Like there's the Browns would be willing to trade up, I believe, if Shedeur ends up in a certain range of picks. That's the way I'll put it. Like, he has to fall to a certain point for them to even think it's worth it. The Giants might act a little more desperately. He mentioned he mentioned some team's going to probably trade up to get him if he slips through the teens. That Giants are the team that I think probably maybe acts a little bit more rash and says, listen, given how the Saquon Barkley situation went, we need a young quarterback here. Let's go get him. And maybe they would jump the Browns to go do something like that. I think the Browns are operating from a place of like patience and just trying to sort of find the best players at the respective picks that they have. And if they can maximize those by getting a player that they value in maybe a Shedeur Sanders by trading up somewhat, I think they'll do it. But there has to be, there's a striking distance range that I think the Browns would consider it. Otherwise, given what Andrew Berry said about fifth-year options, and they're the most valuable, by the way, for quarterback picks, I just don't think it's ultimately going to happen. But as I showed you there from the Jeremy Fowler comments, not ruling it out entirely. And Andrew Berry probably wouldn't rule it out entirely either because, as he always says, they are open to anything when it comes to the NFL draft. We'll see if that's true in this instance, but that is where things stand. And at least some people with information, by the way, are reporting that it still could happen. So just putting it out there, just mentioning it one last time this week because you know how much I love Shedeur Sanders and think he fit this team. I get that a lot of you are against me. That's totally fine. You are welcome to have the opinions that you have. But I wanted to put that out there one more time before we get to draft day on Thursday.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen.
Rumors suggest the Denver Broncos may be looking to trade up into the first round, a little bit higher than the 20th overall pick.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast.
The NFL draft, the week of the rumors escalate. We heard from Broncos general manager George Paton and head coach Sean Payton last week. And one thing that George said in terms about the inner workings of trade calls last week when he met with us in a press conference, he said, the week before the draft, you have calls, but really it gets aggressive the week of the draft. And rumors suggest here, according to Adam Schefter, that the Broncos have made calls. They've been one of the teams that have been interested in making calls about moving up in this year's draft. Is it smokescreen? Is it real?
I that's what I'm wondering. Just like everybody else, right? Because there's the the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder, right? This time of year, that's saying, hey, trade up. You need to trade up. You need to go get your guy. And then there's the angel on the other side that's like, no, stay put, trade back, get more picks. Load up the war chest. All these sorts of things. What's fascinating to me is that simultaneously, trading up for the Denver Broncos in this particular draft would make a ton of sense and would make no sense at all. It would make a ton of sense because, look, you could go get maybe the best playmaker in this class offensively with Ashton Genty, right? If you can move up high enough to get Genty, he could be the missing piece to your roster. So in that sense, I mean, trading up does kind of make a little bit of sense, right? But then, on the other side of the coin, it's like, well, this draft is deep at the positions that you need the most: running back, tight end, defensive line, wide receiver, all these different positions. They could help your team tremendously get over the top in the AFC. So, Cody, to me, I don't know how to read into this. I don't know exactly what to. I know that one thing we do know is that George Paton said last week at the pre-draft presser, right? He talked about how they've already made preliminary calls to just about every team in the NFL. So they've talked to everybody. It's not news that the Broncos have called teams about trading up, because George Paton told us last week that he's already talked to everybody and they have scenarios. But what's interesting about the timing of the rumor is that it comes this week, which is the week that George said, hey, this is when things start to get serious.
Yeah, and part of me is wondering, Adam Schefter, obviously, when he said that, part of me is wondering if he was just referencing what George said in the pre-draft presser about, we've had calls initially here next week, when the draft does come, that's when talks get stronger. I do wonder if that's probably what he piggybacked off of, because even last week, Adam Schefter on NFL Live went out there. This was after the pre-draft press conference, and he talked about guys like Travion Henderson. He talked about guys like Colston Loveland, Omari and Hampton a little bit. Sean's looking for that next Joker. Like, that was the conversation. So it wasn't like Adam Schefter was saying anything that we didn't necessarily know, but I did find it interesting. Like, okay, how valid is this? I think the names you want to keep an eye on when it comes to maybe the pulse on the Broncos from a national scale, I would say Tom Pelissero. We've noted that relationship that he and George Paton certainly have there. I think Jordan Schultz has it in somewhere. I'm very curious to figure out where that is, but Jordan Schultz seems to have a little bit of a finger on the pulse of the Broncos as well. To me, ultimately, Sarah, I think we got to look at it from a multitude of ways. I think you make some great points. Like in this year's draft, like the Broncos aren't in a position where it's like they have to be desperate. Like you need to trade up and get a guy just to get the guy. They said it, and this is where we got to invest. Do we take value in what they're saying, where they believe at 20th overall, they can pick a player of the same quality who's going to be available with the 10th overall pick? Or is that them trying to say, hey, maybe we want to get to the 10th overall pick and then be able to pick a player there? If they do, let's say hypothetically trade up here, Sarah, who do you think they go after? I know you mentioned Ashton Genty, but obviously the Las Vegas Raiders at 6th overall are the team that everyone is pegging them to pick Ashton Genty. I can't see Denver going from the 20th overall pick to pick number 5 and leapfrog in there. That makes things very interesting, though. If the Giants are interested in trading back, which has been a reported rumor, that would be interesting. But why would they want to drop all the way back when they can get a player like Travis Hunter at 3rd overall or an Abdul Carter as a pass rusher? So to me, like the Giants don't necessarily make a lot of sense for Denver to just say, hey, we're going to go from 20. We want to get all the way up to 3rd overall here at this point. I don't see that happening.
I don't either. I think that there's also been some steam gaining towards the Jaguars at 5 being interested in drafting Ashton Genty, and perhaps that would kind of take all these scenarios off the table, because I don't know that I would see anybody outside of, Genty, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland. Those guys are all generally considered top 10 players in this particular class. Maybe Mason Graham, Cody. I'm actually putting together a scenario right now where he falls to 11th overall to the 49ers, because if the Jaguars don't take him at 5 and the Raiders don't take him at 6, what could happen there? So I don't think he's necessarily a blue chip guy worth trading up for, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's got the 32-inch arms, the question marks there. So not that that's the biggest deal in the world, but it might be the difference between trading a future 1st or 2nd round pick to go up and get a guy. So that to me is where I start to wonder, okay, who is that right guy that you'd be willing to trade multiple picks for? Because we know Javonte Williams has led this team in touches the last 2 seasons. That running back position is going to get a lot of work. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to find the guy in round 1, because Sean Payton has found him just about everywhere. George Payton has found him just about everywhere. And Sean even commended George for drafting a guy who had a first round caliber in Dalvin Cook a handful of years ago when he was with the Vikings. He called him out by name during their press conference as well. And so I think the Broncos really do believe they can get that guy on day 2. So now it's just going to be about, all right, let's put our money where our mouth is then. Let's see if you really believe that, or if you truly believe that Genty is head and shoulders above every other running back that you could have in this draft, that you say, we have to get him at any cost, at every cost, whatever it costs, we have to go up and get him. That's got to be the mentality of them saying, we believe we can contend in the AFC if we get player X. It has to be Genty, in my opinion.
Well, and they believe that their offensive line is fully intact, at least at 4 of the 5 positions there. They love their offensive line. We know it's one of the highest graded units by the team itself in that category. So they believe they have the offensive line to get it done. And now it's just about finding, I think, that right running back to be the fit. If Denver were to somehow try to trade into the top 10, Sarah, I imagine they'd have to obviously swap with the 20th overall pick. But part of me thinks they'd have to also give up a first rounder next year, which I don't know. Is that something the Broncos are willing to take a gamble on? It's an interesting question.
Do the Denver Broncos want to have a small targeted draft class in 2025, or do they want to take advantage of the depth of this class? Well, we have a case for both here, Broncos country, but trading down, it's probably the way to go for the Denver Broncos. We're going to tell you why on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. And thanks once again to all of you that make Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. If you haven't already become an everyday listener, hit subscribe wherever you listen, as well as on YouTube. Let's talk about pros and cons of trading up or down in the NFL draft. And we'll start off with, Cody, I think the pros and cons of trading down, because we kind of discussed in segment 1, like, hey, trading up, you're going after a guy, you're giving up future capital, potentially even a future first-round pick to get him. And we talk about how deep this draft is at positions of need for the Denver Broncos. And so, of course, the one real con of trading down in this kind of a draft is that, well, we got to sit there all night Thursday night only for the Broncos to potentially not make a selection. But the pros vastly seem to outweigh the cons when it comes to trading down.
Yeah, I mean, obviously trading down allows you to acquire more draft capital, which can be in return used to trade back up. Like there's so many moving pieces, right? So let's say Denver were to trade out of the 20th spot, and let's say they traded back, 5 spots. Okay, well, they swap there, but maybe they acquire a back end round 2 pick. Maybe they acquire an additional round 3 pick at that point. And then it's like, all right, we know here at 25, we can get a player that we have highly graded on our board based on how things are going. We believe we're going to get a quality player at 25, but we also have back-end capital now in round number 2. We get an additional second, or we get an additional third. That allows us to make quality depth additions here to your roster. So it is kind of like just playing like the numbers game a little bit. Well, I think a lot of people look at it like, well, if you're picking 25th or if you're picking 28th, it's like if you have the luxury of being a Super Bowl team and you're picking 32nd overall, people are like, well, you're not going to get a great player at 32nd overall, but you're going to get a good one. You have to weigh the balance of that. And so what is more valuable here to the Broncos in terms of where they're at? Now, think of it this way. Travion Henderson. Let's say Denver traded back 5 spots to 25th overall. Travion Henderson could still be there, right? Or it gives you additional capital in the second. Say, okay, we're going to swap with another team to move up to the early portion of round number 2 to get Henderson, so he's not taken before the Broncos have a chance to get him. I think trading back gives you more flexibility, though I will say Sean Payton is not the type to really trade back throughout his career. He's more so of a trade up guy. George likes to trade back and acquire more capital. This is their 3rd year together, and we've seen a little bit of balance. We've seen some give and take here. I think really the first year that we had George and Sean together, obviously the 2023 NFL draft, you saw them trade up into round number 2 to get Marvin Mims. And then you saw them obviously select Drew Sanders with their round 3 pick, trade back into round 3 to get a Riley Moss. So we've seen them be aggressive. We've seen them acquire more picks as well by trading back or swapping with the team, but it hasn't necessarily been the first round value. That's where this is all new. This is the 2nd time in a row, really outside of last year. Look, you had Bo Nix. That was a huge need. But now you enter a year where the Broncos don't necessarily have to go out there and say, hey, we must go get this guy or bust. They're not in that position this year, whereas the running back position they've detailed. They have a lot of really good runners in this draft that they like. D-line, there's a lot of really good depth. So for me, just hearing what George and Sean said about how they view running back and D-line, I don't see them necessarily trading up, to be honest with you. I know we talked about that in the first segment. I don't see them trading up. I see them staying put or trading back because, hey, you trade back, acquire more capital. Let's say you get your running back in round 1 or you get a D tackle in round 1. Well, now you can go out there and get a running back in round 2, and then you can just load up with other assets there to build overall depth, because this draft is really outside of maybe running back. You're not drafting a starter here in round 1.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating is, like we've talked about, Sean Payton has said, or George Payton has said, that you might not get a very different player at number 20 that you could get at 10 in this year's draft. And there's not a lot of differentiation in the grades on these guys, at least from what they're saying publicly. And so maybe you feel like if you move out of round 1, let's say a team like the Giants or the Cleveland Browns is really desperate for a quarterback that's there at 20 overall, and they say, hey, here's pick number 33 and pick number 60, whatever it is, and then you can add a number of picks in the top 100. I feel like you're upgrading from potentially getting 3 starters in this draft to getting 4 to 5 potential starters out of just the day 2 picks in this draft. And that might not be something that this team wants to scoff at after missing out on, the first 2 rounds almost entirely of the 2022 and 2023 drafts if they hadn't snuck in with Nick Bonito and Marvin Mims, obviously. But this team doesn't have a ton of recent top 50 picks on the roster, which is big in terms of roster building and development and really having a contender for the long haul. That's the big deal with Denver right now, is this team is not rebuilding. This team is not reloading. This team is not resetting. This team is building upon. This team they've moved into the house, right? They're trying to find, hey, what size of TV do we want in the living room? What kind of couch do we want to get? What kind of fridge do we've got the house, we've got the foundation, we've got the key components. Now we need to start thinking big, dreaming big. Do we want to get a wood kitchen table? What kind of wood do we want to get? What kind of color do we want it to be? They're moving in. They've got all the big stuff. They now need to get the furnishings. They need to feel like, hey, now this house, it's become our home. That's what this draft has to be for the Denver Broncos, and they don't need to trade up in order to make that happen.
I relate to what you say so much right now in my own life because, my fiance and I were getting ready for our wedding, and there's things like we go through like needs and wants. And it's like, oh, I want this. Like, you fill out your registry and it's like, what do we need? Like, what is it that we're going to need? She goes, need this, but I want this. For example, we got a really nice coffee pot. I didn't need it. I wanted it. Whereas she wanted the immersion blender, said, oh, that's actually something that we need. We need a KitchenAid. So for the Broncos, I think, Sarah, you nailed it perfectly. The foundation is there. The overall roster, like your starters on offense and defense, almost every position is accounted for in terms of your starters, who's going to play high impact minutes, who's going to be your key rotational guys. It's about adding quality players and depth that are going to help you not just this year, but maybe 2 years, 3 years down the road. But you want to have high quality players that fit the mold of your team DNA. And I think that's exactly what Sean Payton and George Payton are going to do in this year's draft. Look, there's no simple answer to it by saying, hey, like Denver's going to go aggressively get this one guy and it's going to change their landscape, right? The odds of one player doing that, it's very low, but there's always a possibility, right? All it takes is the right player going to the right situation, which Denver, I think for some players is an ideal fit for a lot of these draft prospects that are coming in here that obviously going to have their names called on night number 1 here. But I really think the meat and bones of this is going to be in rounds 2, 3, 4, and then obviously they have multiple picks in round number 6 here. Will they acquire somehow a 5th round pick? Will they make a draft day trade? Like, this roster is in a position where it could be tweaked a little bit, but you don't have to make widespread changes. Denver's got the foundational pieces, the bricks that are going to keep the foundation sturdy. They've got those in place. And with the quarterback like Bo Nix, now it's about, can we make him better? Can we, not necessarily just him? Obviously, there's the evolution of his own performance where he has to be as a player at that position, but it's, can we get the pieces around Bo Nix that are going to allow him to thrive? Can we get the defensive players, the right defensive guys that are going to get him more opportunities to possess the football, to get off the field? That's one thing the Broncos want to do a little bit more of this season. And it's multifaceted. It's not just, hey, let's get Bo Nix as many weapons as possible, because guess what? You only have 11 guys on the field at one time. So as much as cool as that would be to be able to get, all these guys, build it the right way. And I think that Sean and George, they're aligned on what that right way is. And I think Thursday, we're going to find out exactly. We're going to get clarity, cemented concrete evidence about what that may be.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
The NFL Draft will give the Chicago Bears a chance to answer some of the biggest questions on their roster.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast.
After we saw free agency, where Ben Johnson got a couple of his guys and Dennis Allen got a couple of his guys, how well that continues into the NFL Draft, or if this is a realm where Ryan Poles will have a little bit more say, a little bit more swinging power to kind of say, no, we're going to draft the guys that we see as the best players, sort of not regardless of, but without complete power over, like, is this an ideal Ben Johnson player? Is this an ideal Dennis Allen player? Or is this just the best player available, so take this talented player and make it work? Right? When we think about how they went through free agency with the trades and the signings that they made, they went and got a guard that Ben Johnson used to work with in Detroit, in Jonah Jackson. They went and got another top guard in the trade market in Joe Thuney, who Ryan Poles had familiar with. They got the top center in Drew Dahlman. Like, clearly, Ben Johnson came in and said, I want to overhaul, fix, and prioritize the interior of this offensive line. And Ryan Poles got those guys for Ben Johnson. You know, they didn't spend a lot at wide receiver. They didn't go out and add at running back. They didn't add an offensive tackle. They didn't get much at tight end. They got what Ben Johnson wanted on his offensive line. And same thing on the defensive line, right? They go out and get a big-bodied, long defensive end in Dayo Odeyingbo that fits the mold of the type of player Dennis Allen has typically preferred and coveted at the defensive end position. And then they add a really solid, strong, consistent veteran leader on the interior in Grady Jarrett that Dennis Allen coached against a lot and really wanted to have as a part of this interior defensive line. Like, these were two guys that fit exactly what Dennis Allen would like. There was a clear, strong influence on getting these coaches their guys that they were really fired up about in free agency to say, hey, we need these veterans that are going to be key pieces of what we want to be able to accomplish as these new Bears coaches. But the NFL draft might be a little different, or could be a little bit different. And how much different or not, I think will tell us a lot about how much influence Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen have on the Bears draft board. Because obviously, Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen can't influence who's going to be there when the Bears are picking at 10. And maybe, there's going to be situations where, Ben Johnson's guy or Dennis Allen's guy is the top option available anyway, so you take them. And there's going to be times when maybe Ben Johnson's guy or Dennis Allen's guy, their type of player isn't necessarily the best player available on the board. And that's where you start to narrow this down, where it's like, if you're Ryan Poles, are you drafting players specifically because that they're the ideal, scheme fit for what your coaching staff prefers? Or are you going to take the best, most talented player available and have your coaching staff make it work because you're going to say, hey, this is a really good player, even though maybe it doesn't do exactly the kind of things we do, you need to find a way to make it work with this player because he's very, very good. So you put him in the best position to be successful, even if it's not quote unquote ideal for your scheme, right? So we think about this in terms of the defensive ends in this draft class, especially in the first round. There are bigger, longer defensive ends that kind of fit more what Dennis Allen has preferred. Somebody like Michael Williams from Georgia or Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. But Ryan Poles and the scouting staff could look at somebody like Mike Green from Marshall or James Pierce from Tennessee and see more production, more well-rounded skill set, more refined skill set, more advanced as a pass rusher. But those guys aren't as big and long and, oversized on the edge. And so it's a question of, do you go get the guy who's Dennis Allen's preferred style of scheme fit? Or if you're the scouting staff, you say, we really think Mike Green or James Pierce, whoever is going to be the better player, then who gets the final say there? Like, what's the priority there? And it's not just the defensive end positions, but I think about at cornerback. We know Dennis Allen is a coach who's going to run more man coverage than what the Bears have run in the past. It's not extreme man coverage, but Dennis Allen might prefer a corner that has some more man coverage skills that they can trust in one-on-one situations, and because you can kind of buffer the zone with safety help over the top, but when it's man-to-man coverage, you need that man-to-man guy. But if there's a really good corner that maybe isn't as special in man-to-man, but just has elite zone instincts and ball skills, like what becomes the priority there? Maybe the all-around better player, or a player that's more of a specific scheme fit to what Dennis Allen might like? Same thing on offense. I think about with the running backs, right? You get Dennis. We know Ben Johnson is going to run a lot of outside zone and more zone concepts. So then, are you only drafting the zone running backs like Caleb Johnson, or if you look at guys that ran more gap scheme stuff in college, like if you think they're a better, more talented running back, how much does scheme fit and coach preference play in there? I think you can make a similar case on the offensive line for the same reasons, right? Offensive lineman who can get out in space and zone, or is there a better all-around prospect that is fine in zone, right? It's about specialties here. You're not going to draft a player that just straight up can't do what your coach is going to ask them to do, right? There is a line there somewhere, but we're talking about talent versus ideal fit. And you might just say, well, hey, this player didn't run a lot of outside zone in college, but we think he's super, super talented and can do it at this next level. So let's get the more talented player, even if he hasn't always been the ideal scheme fit, and we'll make him a scheme fit by, in some ways, molding the scheme a little bit around him, or finding a role within the scheme on either side of the ball that can utilize that player to the best of his abilities, even if it's not neatly in the box that Ben Johnson might prefer on offense or Dennis Allen might prefer on defense. So I'm really curious to see how they manage those preferences of overall talent versus potential scheme fit, and what that tells us about how much influence these Bears coaches are having on the draft board, getting guys for the coaches versus just getting really good football players and telling the coaching staff, hey, this is a really good player. You find a way to make it work, because if you can't make him work, then you're the problem, not him, because this is a really good, talented football player that we have to get in this draft because we believe in him. In the converse there, I also think what positions the Bears decide to invest in will tell us a lot about how they feel about what they have on the roster and what they don't have on the roster. In particular, I'm curious how much of a priority ultimately does get put on weapons like running backs, tight ends, and even wide receivers, or if they go through the draft and don't address it much, then they've got a lot of confidence in what the Bears have here.